Most people think manipulation is obvious, but real manipulators are silent architects. They don't control you with force, they control you with psychology. They rewrite your reality, plant doubts in your mind, and slowly pull your life into their hands without you even noticing. And the scariest part, manipulators don't look dangerous, they look loving, supportive, even harmless, until you start losing yourself piece by piece. In this video, you'll discover 6 signs someone is secretly manipulating you. The same tactics used by toxic partners, controlling friends, and even high-level narcissists. If even one of these signs feels familiar, it's time to wake up, because the mind games end the moment you learn to see them. They twist your reality in ways so subtle that you don't even realize it. As happening, it begins with small corrections, gentle disagreements, tiny suggestions that your memory isn't as sharp as you think. At first you brush it off. Everyone forgets things, right? But manipulation doesn't start with a direct attack. It starts with a seed of doubt, a seed they carefully plant inside your mind. Over time, this doubt grows roots. You begin to second-guess what you saw, what you heard, and eventually what you felt. This is the foundation of gaslighting, the most powerful weapon a manipulator uses to take control of your life. When they twist your reality, their goal is simple: make you trust them more than you trust yourself. They want to become the filter through which you view the world. The moment they achieve this, your independence disappears. You stop relying on your own judgment. You stop acting from your own truth. Instead, you start seeking their approval, their interpretation, their version of events. You begin to accept their narrative even when it contradicts your own experiences. And this is exactly how manipulation becomes invisible, because you genuinely believe they must be right. A manipulator uses confusion as a tool. If you question something they did, they flip the situation. They turn your concerns into overreactions. They accuse you of being dramatic, emotional, or sensitive. They make you feel like your reactions are the problem, not their behavior. Soon, you're apologizing for things you never did wrong, simply because they've convinced you that you misunderstood the situation. Slowly, without realizing it, you start to silence your own voice. Another part of twisting reality is their ability to reshape conversations. If they hurt you, they deny it ever happened or claim you misunderstood their intentions. If they made a promise and broke it, they insist they never said that, or they turn it into a joke so you feel silly for bringing it up. And if you push harder, they shift the blame back onto you. They'll say things like you always misremember, or you take everything the wrong way, until you start believing it. That's when the manipulation becomes self-sustaining. You begin gaslighting yourself. What makes this tactic so dangerous is that it steals clarity. Clarity is power. When your clarity is taken from you, you feel lost. You feel dependent on the very person who is causing the confusion. They become your anchor not because they are stable, but because they made you feel unstable. This imbalance gives them full control over your emotional world. You start seeking reassurance from them, even though they are the source of your insecurity. That's the trap. Manipulators twist reality not just to control your mind, but to protect their own image. They will rewrite events in ways that make them appear innocent, wise, or even heroic. Meanwhile, you are painted as wrong, forgetful, or unreasonable. And because you're already doubting yourself, you accept this version of reality. You begin to feel grateful for their guidance, unaware that what you're actually experiencing is psychological domination. This form of manipulation happens slowly, quietly, and consistently. It doesn't rely on yelling or threats. It relies on patience. A manipulator knows that if they can make you question your own mind, they never have to force you to obey. You will obey naturally, because you believe their reality more than your own. That is the true power of twisting your perception. They use guilt as a weapon in ways that feel emotional rather than manipulative, which is exactly why it works so effectively. Guilt is one of the strongest human emotions. It can make you apologize for things you didn't do, stay in situations that hurt you, and sacrifice your own peace just to keep someone else from being upset. Manipulators know this, and they exploit it with precision. Their goal is to make you feel responsible not only for your actions, but for their feelings, their reactions, and even their life circumstances. Once they convince you that you are the cause of their pain, you become easier to control. The pattern usually starts subtly. Maybe you didn't pick up their call and suddenly they act devastated. Or you tell them you're busy and they make a comment like, "It's okay, I guess I'm just not important anymore." They deliver these lines with a tone that mixes sorrow and disappointment, forcing you to feel like you've done something wrong even when you haven't. You begin to over-explain yourself, trying to comfort them, trying to fix something that wasn't broken. And that's how they hook you. Every time you respond to their guilt trips, you reinforce their belief that guilt works on you and they use it again. A manipulator thrives when you feel guilty, because guilt puts you in a defensive state. Instead of confronting them or holding your boundaries, you focus on proving that you are not the bad person they make you feel like. You become more compliant, more forgiving, more eager to please. It becomes easier for them to get what they want, because you're too busy trying not to upset them. The more responsible you feel for their emotional well-being, the less you prioritize your own. This imbalance creates a relationship dynamic where their needs are always centered and your needs are minimized or ignored. One of their most powerful strategies is playing the victim. Whenever you express discomfort, set a boundary, or simply ask for respect, they flip the script. Suddenly, they're the ones hurt by your actions. They might say things like, "After everything I do for you, this is how you treat me," or "I guess I'm just a burden to you." These statements are not expressions of genuine pain, they are psychological traps designed to make you feel guilty for asserting yourself. Instead of addressing the real issue, you find yourself comforting them, apologizing, or reassuring them, even though you were the one who deserved honesty or understanding in the first place. Sometimes manipulators use emotional exaggeration to weaponize guilt. They turn minor problems into dramatic catastrophes. If you disagree with them, they act like you've betrayed them. If you spend time with someone else, they behave as if you're abandoning them. The intensity of their reactions forces you to question your intentions, even when you've done nothing wrong. You start changing your behavior to avoid triggering their dramatic responses, and slowly you lose your freedom. They don't have to forbid anything, they simply make you feel guilty for doing it. What makes guilt manipulation so dangerous is that it often comes disguised as love, care, or vulnerability. They may say they're hurt because they care too much. They may portray themselves as fragile or emotionally wounded, so you feel obligated to protect them. But genuine vulnerability doesn't demand emotional sacrifice. Manipulated guilt does. It drains your energy while feeding their control. Over time, guilt becomes the emotional leash they use to pull you back whenever you try to create distance or reclaim your independence. Even when you start recognizing their patterns, the guilt makes you hesitate. What if you really are the problem? What if you really are hurting them? That's the psychological cage they build, one that keeps you trapped not with force, but with your own empathy turned against you. They love bomb and then withdraw, creating an emotional rhythm that keeps you hooked without you even realizing it. At first, it feels intoxicating. You are overwhelmed with attention, praise, and affection. They text constantly, shower you with compliments, and make you feel like you've finally met someone who gets you. This stage feels almost magical because it taps into a deep human desire to be seen, appreciated, and loved unconditionally. You feel special, chosen, and even protected. The manipulator knows exactly how to trigger this sense of euphoria, and it sets the stage for total emotional dependency. Once the foundation of trust and attachment is built, the withdrawal begins. The texts slow down, compliments become rare, calls are missed or delayed. You suddenly feel distance where there was once closeness. This withdrawal isn't accidental. It's a calculated strategy. By removing the affection they previously gave freely, they create a sense of scarcity. Scarcity makes the brain crave what it no longer has. You find yourself thinking constantly about why they are distant, what you did wrong, or how you can get back into their favor. The love-bombing phase makes you emotionally invested, and the withdrawal phase makes you desperate to regain that high. This push and pull dynamic is a psychological trap. You start prioritizing their approval above your own needs. You try harder to earn their affection, even if it means compromising your boundaries. Your self-esteem becomes tied to their attention. You measure your worth based on their responses. And because humans are wired to seek connection and avoid rejection, your mind interprets their withdrawal as a signal to fix things, to chase them, to prove your loyalty. The manipulator doesn't need to say anything directly. This cycle of love and withdrawal does the controlling for them. Manipulators are careful with timing. They know exactly how long to stay distant to create anxiety without pushing you away completely. They may withdraw after a minor disagreement, or simply because they want to test your attachment. You might feel a wave of panic, confusion, or even guilt, wondering if you did something wrong. This discomfort is their leverage. They've created an environment where your emotions are constantly reacting to them, rather than being stable or independent. You begin to monitor your behavior, second-guess yourself, and adjust to meet their unspoken expectations. The cycle also includes intermittent reinforcement, which is a term from behavioral psychology. When you occasionally receive affection after a period of withdrawal, it triggers a dopamine rush. Your brain rewards you for enduring the emotional pain, which strengthens the bond to the manipulator even more. This is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive or keeps people stuck in toxic relationships. You start associating your emotional highs with their presence and your lows with their absence, creating a dependence that feels almost biological. What makes this tactic particularly insidious is that it often masquerades as romance or care. You convince yourself that the intensity of the feelings is proof of love, when in reality it is proof of manipulation. You may even defend their behavior to friends or rationalize it in your own mind. They read just busy or they need space. But each defense only strengthens their control, because it trains you to tolerate inconsistency and dismiss your own discomfort. Over time, the love bombing and withdrawal cycle erodes your emotional stability. You no longer trust your instincts about relationships, and you start to rely on their signals to determine how you feel. The manipulator achieves exactly what they want, an emotional puppet, perpetually reacting to their cues, always chasing approval, and never free to act from their own sense of self. The pattern is subtle, addictive, and destructive, but once recognized, it is also reversible. Awareness is the first step toward breaking free. They attack your confidence in ways so subtle that it feels like normal interaction at first. It often begins with small remarks disguised as jokes or advice. They might say something like, "Are you sure you can handle that?" or make comparisons to others in a way that undermines your self-esteem. At first you might laugh it off or dismiss it as harmless, but repeated over time, these comments chip away at your sense of self-worth. You start to internalize their messages, believing that you are inadequate, incapable, or inferior. This erosion of confidence is intentional. A person who doubts themselves is easier to influence, easier to control, and less likely to push back against manipulation. Manipulators know that confidence is power. The more confident you are, the harder it is for them to dominate you. By targeting your self-esteem, they weaken your emotional defenses and make you dependent on their validation. They may use subtle put-downs in front of others to embarrass you or highlight your mistakes. You may even catch yourself apologizing unnecessarily or downplaying your achievements just to avoid their disapproval. Each small attack adds up, creating a cumulative effect that makes you question your abilities and decisions. Another tactic they use is creating doubt about your perception of reality or your judgment. They may say things like, "I don't think you understand this correctly," or "You're overreacting again," even if you know they are wrong. The constant questioning of your thoughts erodes your confidence in your own mind. Over time, you begin to defer to them, seeking their opinion or permission before making choices. This dependency reinforces their control and further diminishes your self-assurance. They also exploit your vulnerabilities. If they know what makes you insecure, they will strategically use it against you, whether it's your appearance, intelligence, social skills, or professional abilities. They subtly highlight weaknesses to create self-doubt. Sometimes this comes in the form of helpful advice that masks criticism. By presenting their attacks as guidance, they maintain the illusion of care while simultaneously undermining you. You may even start to believe that your flaws are real and that you need them to correct or support you, which traps you further in their influence. Manipulators often combine attacks on confidence with emotional manipulation. They may swing between criticism and praise, keeping you off balance. One moment they belittle your skills, the next they compliment you in a way that feels rare and precious. This inconsistency keeps your mind engaged, making you crave their approval and validation. The emotional highs and lows reinforce the cycle of dependency, making it harder to trust your own judgment or sense of worth. A key aspect of this manipulation is that it often feels personal but is actually strategic. Their attacks are designed not to hurt randomly but to create a predictable outcome. You questioning yourself and relying on them, they don't need to be overtly cruel. Subtlety is far more effective. Even a casual remark, repeated often enough and paired with their attention or approval, can erode confidence over time. What makes attacking confidence so dangerous is that it changes how you see yourself and the world. You may start believing that you are incapable of achieving goals on your own, or that you are inherently flawed. Your decisions become cautious, hesitant, or overly reliant on external input. This is exactly what manipulators want: someone who is self-doubting, dependent, and easier to influence. By systematically undermining your confidence, they maintain control while presenting themselves as your guide, supporter, or protector, keeping you trapped in a cycle of doubt and need for their validation. They control through silence and distance in ways that are invisible yet deeply powerful. Unlike overt aggression, this tactic doesn't rely on confrontation or argument. Instead, Manipulators use absence as a weapon. When you don't meet their expectations or assert yourself in ways they dislike, they respond with withdrawal, coldness, avoidance, or complete silence. At first it might feel like a simple lapse in attention, but repeated over time, it becomes a pattern that forces you to chase their approval and fear their disapproval. The psychological impact of this tactic is subtle but profound, because humans are hardwired to seek connection and avoid rejection. The key mechanism here is emotional deprivation. When someone important to you suddenly becomes distant, your mind instinctively searches for reasons. You replay conversations, analyze your actions, and wonder if you did something wrong. This mental preoccupation keeps you tied to the manipulator even in their absence. The silence itself becomes a tool of control. The longer it lasts, the more anxious and uncertain you feel, and the more likely you are to adjust your behavior to regain their attention. The manipulator doesn't need to communicate their demands. The absence speaks for itself, guiding your actions without a single word. This tactic also exploits fear. Fear of abandonment is a deeply rooted human emotion. By withdrawing affection, attention, or communication, manipulators trigger that fear and make you feel that you must act to restore the relationship. You might apologize unnecessarily, overcompensate for imagined mistakes, or suppress your own needs to avoid provoking another period of distance. The manipulator has effectively shifted power from dialogue to emotional leverage, making you dependent on their responses to feel secure. Control through silence and distance often pairs with intermittent reinforcement. After a period of withdrawal, they may return with warmth, attention, or praise. This sudden return after a period of deprivation creates a powerful psychological reward. Your brain experiences a rush of relief and satisfaction, which reinforces the behavior pattern. You begin to associate your happiness with their approval, and their silence with emotional punishment. The cycle becomes self-sustaining. You crave their attention, they withhold it strategically, and your actions increasingly revolve around their mood and behavior rather than your own priorities. Manipulators often use this tactic in combination with other strategies, like criticism or emotional manipulation. For example, after a period of silence, they may accuse you of being too sensitive or demanding. This reframes the withdrawal as a justified response on their part, making you feel guilty or irrational for even noticing the silence. Over time, you start to accept their emotional unpredictability as normal, adjusting your behavior to minimize conflict and maintain their attention. This normalization is precisely what gives them ongoing control, because you begin regulating yourself based on their emotional patterns instead of your own instincts or needs. The danger of this tactic is that it erodes your confidence and autonomy. You start questioning whether your feelings are valid, whether your needs matter, and whether you can trust your own judgment about relationships. You may even begin to tolerate behavior you would have previously rejected, simply to avoid triggering another period of silence or distance. The manipulator doesn't need to force you to comply. You comply voluntarily because you fear the consequences of inaction. Ultimately, controlling through silence and distance is about creating dependency. By manipulating your emotions without explicit demands, they shift power entirely to themselves. You feel compelled to chase, please, and appease, while they maintain the upper hand without ever saying a word. It is a subtle, relentless, and psychologically exhausting form of control, one that slowly erodes your independence, self-assurance, and emotional freedom. Recognizing it is the first step toward reclaiming your power and breaking free from the cycle of manipulation. They keep you guessing through unpredictability, and it is one of the most insidious tactics a manipulator can use. The human mind craves stability and certainty. When these are absent, anxiety, vigilance, and obsession naturally take their place. Manipulators exploit this instinct, alternating between kindness and cruelty, attention and neglect, approval and criticism. The unpredictability keeps you emotionally off balance, constantly scanning for cues and adjusting your behavior in response. Over time, you begin to prioritize their moods and reactions above your own needs or desires, which is exactly the control they seek. The pattern often starts subtly. One day they may be exceptionally warm, attentive, and charming, making you feel valued and secure. You feel a sense of connection, trust, and even euphoria. The next day, without warning, they may become cold, distant, or critical. Their words and actions may feel sharp, confusing, or contradictory to what you experienced before. This swing from positive to negative creates a mental and emotional state in which you are constantly on edge, trying to anticipate their next mood. You begin to question your own perception, wondering if you misinterpreted their behavior or did something to cause the change. This instability is deliberate, and it feeds directly into their ability to control you. Unpredictability works because it triggers a survival response. Your brain interprets inconsistency in a close relationship as a threat. You begin to analyze every word, tone, and action, looking for patterns or mistakes you might have made. You replay interactions repeatedly, trying to understand what caused the shift. This mental energy keeps you preoccupied with the manipulator, and every small gesture of kindness feels like a reward you must earn or protect. The emotional highs feel addictive, while the lows instill fear and self-doubt, creating a cycle similar to intermittent reinforcement in behavioral psychology. The push and pull strengthens their control, because you begin to tolerate behavior you would otherwise reject just to regain positive attention. Manipulators often combine unpredictability with emotional manipulation. For example, after a harsh or critical interaction, they might suddenly act loving, apologetic, or generous. This inconsistent behavior makes it difficult for you to trust your own judgment about the relationship. You start rationalizing or excusing their negative actions, believing that their kindness outweighs the harm. The unpredictability keeps you mentally trapped, because your brain associates emotional volatility with significance, attachment, and the possibility of reward. Another aspect of this tactic is that it prevents you from setting firm boundaries. If someone's behavior is consistent, it's easier to identify patterns, recognize manipulation, and take action. But when their moods, words, and actions are unpredictable, you hesitate to assert yourself. You fear triggering another negative reaction or losing the rare moments of warmth. Your decisions become reactive rather than intentional, shaped by their emotional swings rather than your own values or needs. Over time, this constant guessing erodes self-confidence and autonomy. You start doubting your instincts and interpretations, second-guessing your emotions, and feeling responsible for managing their moods. The manipulator has created a psychological environment in which you are perpetually seeking stability from them, even though they are the source of instability. Your emotional energy is drained, your independence is diminished, and your ability to make clear, confident decisions is compromised. Ultimately, keeping you guessing is about control through chaos. By alternating between affection and withdrawal, approval and criticism, warmth and coldness, they ensure that your thoughts, feelings, and actions revolve around their behavior. You become reactive, dependent, and obsessed with decoding their moods. What feels like a dynamic, exciting relationship is actually a meticulously engineered cycle of psychological dominance. Recognizing this unpredictability is crucial, because understanding the pattern is the first step toward reclaiming your emotional stability, self-confidence, and freedom. Manipulation almost never screams. It whispers. It works quietly in the background, subtly shaping your thoughts, feelings, and choices until you don't even realize you're not in control anymore. It's a slow poison. They twist your reality, making you question what's real. They weaponize guilt, making their problems your fault. One moment, they shower you with affection. The next, they pull away, leaving you desperate for their approval. They chip away at your confidence, so you start to believe you need them. They use silence as a weapon, forcing you to break first. This isn't love, it's a game, but awareness is your first step to freedom. Once you see these patterns, you can start setting boundaries, trusting your gut again, and taking back your life. You deserve to be in control of your own story. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.